Hi, thanks for checking in today. Hope that these daily doses are doing you good and helping you and encouraging you. But today I need to start with a confession. I need to get something off my chest that I've been carrying for about 50 years. When I was about 8 years old, I remember going to the convenience store with a friend in the neighborhood. And yeah, that does date me. We did walk wildly through the neighborhood on our own without supervision back in the day. But we went to the convenience store. We each had money, this friend of mine and I, and we were going to get candy. So we go to the store. I bought the candy I wanted with the money I had, and he bought something with his money. And as we were leaving the store, I realized he had money left. And so there were other things, obviously, that I wanted. And so somehow I was able to convince this friend of mine that he should go back in and buy something else for me, even though he explained to me that that money was intended for his brother, his sister. He was supposed to get something from them. But I was somehow, I don't know what I said, but somehow I was able to convince him to buy something else for me. And on that day, I learned two things that were really important. One is I learned the power of persuasion. That if all else fails, I can be a used car salesman. Apparently, I can talk people out of their money. But the second thing I learned that day was the power of guilt. And the weight that was on me that day is later, as I began to reflect and think about it, even as an 8-year-old boy, of just a sense of guilt of what I had done, of talking my friend into spending his brothers and sisters' money on me. And that was just kind of an interesting thing that still 50 years later, it's still on my mind. I still think about it. Just ask you today, how do you typically respond to feelings of guilt in your life? In Luke chapter 23, verses 42 and 43, we have the account of Jesus on the cross. And as he's being crucified, the Bible tells us on each side of him there is a thief or a criminal. And we have two different responses from these two men. On one side, the one man, he mocks Jesus and he says, if you're really the Messiah, then rescue yourself. And oh, by the way, while you're at it, rescue me. And so what he was really saying is get me out of my mess. If you can get me out of it, then do that. But on the other side of the cross is a very different response. The criminal on the other side, it says that he knew his guilt. He recognized it. He even says, I'm worthy of whatever punishment I'm receiving today. But then he looks to Jesus and he simply says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Now, that may not mean a lot, but when you look at Jesus' response, you really begin to understand what it was he was asking, because Jesus' response was this. He says that I tell you today, you'll be with me in paradise. And so what he's really saying is I will enter into that with you, into your moment of difficulty, in your moment of guilt. So on one side, we have a man who says, get me out of my mess. On the other side, we have a man who says, Jesus, come into my mess with me. And he invites him into that. I'm reminded as well of Jesus at the Last Supper. The same words are spoken to his disciples. He breaks the bread and he tells them, remember me. And what he's really saying in that moment is not just remember who I was or remember our time together and just occasionally think about me. But what he's really saying is I want to be in the middle of your life. And so we can look at our guilt and the weight of our difficulties at different perspectives. Often we can say, God, just get me out of this, get me out of my mess. But really our heart's cry should be, God, I welcome you into my mess. Come and help me, walk me through that, because Jesus wants to be with you in the middle of your mess. Don't fall for the trap that would tell you you need to get your act all together, clean it all up, and then Jesus will come be with you. He wants to be with you today, right where you are, in whatever guilt you may be carrying, whatever difficulty, whatever trial you may have in your life. He wants to be in the middle of that. And so I would encourage you today, instead of focusing on your sin, focus on your salvation. Instead of focusing on the guilt, focus on the grace that is offered to you. Because Jesus' death on the cross and his resurrection means that grace is what we get instead of what we deserve. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so glad that my mistakes don't have to go with me for 50 years plus. But God's grace washes us, cleanses us, and he walks into the middle of those situations and those circumstances with us. So don't focus on your guilt today. Focus on the grace that Jesus Christ offers you. Invite him into the middle of your mess. Invite him into the middle of whatever's happening in your life today, because he wants to be with you. Don't go through it alone, but invite him in. And I believe that as you do that, he's going to come and he's going to be your comforter, your counselor. He's going to be your guide, and he's going to reassure you, and he's going to help walk you through every difficult moment you have. So invite him in today. Don't do it alone. Invite him in with you. Have a great day. God bless you.